Mercy, mercy, mercy.
Welcome to the Ascent of Mount Carmel YouTube channel. And I'm very happy to have back Nate Vaughn and Sebastian Malik, who have been collaborating with me for at least a couple of years on the Divine Mercy devotion and the issues and problems related to it. And today we're going to talk more about the website, realdivinemercy.org. Nate, can you give me an update on the website and where do you think it can go?
Sure. The website is up and running. It's complete with some minor pending little items that in the future will unroll. But at the moment, it's really quite complete. It's really quite available for anybody who would like information, like to have a comprehensive information on the topic, would like to share information on the topic.
That's really what it needs right now, don't you think? To have more people involved and sharing information.
Yeah, I think so. That's a fine idea. And those people who presently have an interest in it, or their curiosity is piqued and they would then like to visit the site to have more information about it, at the point where you compile enough information for yourself, you're convinced of it, or you're compelled, or you're interested. And then with that information, you can then go talk and discuss the topic and these individual points with other people, some of whom you know very well, maybe family, maybe in some cases a close family, some people you know more casually, although it could be at church, and in some cases it could be somebody, a colleague, a friendly acquaintance who doesn't know a lot about the Catholic Church at all, is not Catholic, but you have this sort of an interesting topic to tell them about and a controversy. But really, we'd like the Catholic world to be updated about really the full story about the Divine Mercy devotion, to the extent that we've collected this comprehensive body of information. Well, it has to disseminate, and it will be communicated from one person to the other, either via the internet or via print materials, which are handed out, or a conversation, which is often the most effective or convincing way sometimes to show people that you're convinced, or really to give them information. We're not about persuading people as much as we are sharing information. So there's a large body of information, which is, for some reason, and I don't quite know why, but could be timing, it could be just some coincidences, that it hasn't been uncovered up to now. And just happened to be in the right place at the right time, myself and Sebastian, under the leadership of Father Peter Scott, VSSPX. So here we are. And if I collected the information, what we'd like is that people will share it, communicate it. And then at a certain point, we'd like it to become the common knowledge of the Catholic world, and a part of conversations up until the time when it's really largely known and largely understood, that the basic items of information that we're sharing are correct and form the basic understanding of the devotion, and then inform what the devotion is and how it's practiced, for good or ill. But this is a matter of information. It really seems to me that the overview, the big picture at the moment, is really that this information will take a while to leak out. Some people who are involved with the information and would like to share it may be active in doing so and enthusiastic about doing so. I think it's a matter of time before this information leaks out and informs the conversation and the understanding about the Divine Mercy. When I say matter of time, I really think in my head it's about a 2-year sort of time frame before sort of ordinary person, whoever that might be, I mean, just sort of at an average, has this extra information, or some of it, and has that working knowledge when they think about this devotion, or when they talk about the devotion. So we're talking about a campaign. I can give suggestions for activity, but I'm not really trying to rally people as much as I am saying that the information is open and available, and it just seems to me that it's going to be kind of disseminate maybe slowly but effectively into the consciousness. That's just how it occurs to me. Some of the reasons being that, I mean, this devotion is very entrenched. People have a very strong compulsion towards it in some cases, or they have sentimentality, and sometimes it's for a good reason, meaning that they were converted to the Catholic faith or they found a vocation through the Divine Mercy. That's something my priest told me. That's one reason they don't really take a hard line against it. They sort of try to gently turn people towards the Sacred Heart. But, this is a controversy because people are pretty involved with it. But that's really no reason that the information will not be effective because it's simple information. But I don't think we have to take a too hard A line or be too sort of forceful. Although there surely will be debates about it, and you know how we are on social media, which is fine. I mean, we can be argumentative.
Logic dictates that this devotion is false. And when people have the information and they're confronted with it, and they do see it without dismissing it out of hand, they generally do become convinced there's a problem with it. And we are making a difference. The official Divine Mercy YouTube channel came out with a video just the other day, maybe a week ago, purportedly answering traditionalist objections. The problem is they believe they can do that because they sincerely believe they have the truth because they're so invested in it. When you're invested in something, you don't look at something objectively. And the problem is when they try to answer objections, they're not able to do so because they really don't have the objective truth.
That's been my experience. And in fact, I feel a little bit bad.
I don't want to name names and get personalities involved in it. But the point is, people are standing up, taking notice that there's a current going against this devotion right now. And it has people who are invested in it worried because that's their thing. That devotion is basically some people's career. And they're concerned, but they don't know how to address these things because they really can't.
Yeah, absolutely. This is built on some very flimsy pretexts. And in fact, it wasn't really built on a lot of pretexts at all. It was built on the charisma and it was built on the authority, whether it was misused or not, of John Paul II. He set this up and he was able to do that, but he's not around anymore. And also his star is going down. He's being forgotten in time, and communism and his major accomplishments, so-called, are being forgotten, and his celebrity is being forgotten. I think that the timing is really here that this devotion be reconsidered in a wider consciousness. Now we're talking about the shrines. These are these these institutions that are dedicated to sharing the message of the Divine Mercy, as it's called. I don't really see the practical value of these shrines and being personal or subjective. But there's not a lot that they can say once you present a critical argument against the Divine Mercy devotion and the history of it. It's really not going to be a difficult debate to win because all the information is really on our side. And I don't mean our side as a competitor. I'm not trying to say that, although maybe that's how it comes together. I just mean for people who never had a vested interest in this devotion and who looked at it critically and just take fact after fact and come to a conclusion about it. I know the conclusion that I have come to, and it didn't happen overnight. In fact, it maybe took a couple of years of scholarly research before I came to a more concrete conclusion about it. And I was sort of back and forth for a while. There's a lot of reasons that it's become pseudo-approved as it is. And one is John Paul II, but it's not just him because he had collaborators, and before him, there were people like Father Sapachko who were heavily supporting it, and they had a couple of bishops a little bit on their side, but no, the bishops were always against it as a body. So, the ultimate authority of the church has been against this devotion from the beginning because they looked at it critically and they looked at it as caretakers of the church. There was a major enthusiastic popularity I think it's located certain cities of Poland, Vilnius, where Sapachka was, maybe where it was promoted the most actively. The people took it on. That was in the context of Polish occupation. That was with the Polish character. Those two things together made it so popular. It made its way to the USA with these Marian fathers who became also personally very zealous about it. And then it ended up in Stockbridge, and then it took off. And then when John Paul II, I would think he must have financed it to this guy. He really just built this whole institution about it. But it's very funny because it doesn't stand up to the basic scholarship of it. But there's always been about 35% enthusiasm among the sisters, among the superiors, and but a majority of cautious reserve or outright rejection, like by the bishops.
In our past videos, we have documented a total of 316 contradictions with either existing Catholic teaching or internal contradictions, Sister Faustina contradicting herself. That's a lot of contradictions. That's a lot of errors. And it just doesn't hold up to scrutiny.
Yeah, and you have to feel bad for people who have all their eggs in this because, but then you wonder how did it get so far. It's never had a critical analysis. It is hundreds of papers, and Sebastian can look at the Polish academia and the books and the articles.
Sebastian, what do you think?
It's good that this information is coming out slowly but surely. Great thing that we've got this website out because it's in one place. People are able to search for articles, links. My idea and Nate's was to kind of use it as a resource area, like a library, so people can dip in and dip out. And then eventually it'd be great if some priests would get involved in terms of, because I think us as lay people, we can only take it as far.
It's a great point. I know we have priests watching because every now and then I get a comment. We'd like them to take it a step further and get involved. How can they get involved? Just sharing the material, or are there any other suggestions that you have?
First of all, looking at the material, I think the most important thing does the message, does the promises, do they contradict the Catholic faith? Is it a danger to the Catholic faith? We're not talking about a green jumper, a red jumper, blue jumper. There's many devotions that have been fully approved by the church, and some prefer the devotion to the Holy Face. Another one will prefer the devotion to the five wounds, and so forth. And so I think it's important that these aren't just contradictions, as you mentioned, over 300 contradictions, but it's that they change the Catholic faith, and it's a danger to the Catholic faith. Now, I think is important, but also that we have to take it step by step. We've got to remember that most Catholics have been deprived of a good Catholic education and the catechism. This was the idea that myself and Nate also came up with, is by linking to traditional catechisms for people first. I think first and foremost, people have got to learn and study the faith. And if there's contradictions, like I don't want to kind of them against us type scenario, as in like pre-Vatican II and post-Vatican II. But if there are meaningful contradictions here and errors that can lead to heresy, then it's obviously we have to look at these things. And so it's important for, as the foundations of our faith, we have to learn what the doctrines are, what the dogmas are, and how the church has always, what the church has always taught about this. And I think that's key, because once you understand what the Catholic faith is and what it has been taught for 2,000 years, and how this new evangelical way is contradictory, this devotion, the Divine Mercy devotion, fits in actually perfectly with modernism and post-conciliar church. And so people will not see the contradiction, because what they've been taught has completely different. So we have to show them that the teachings and the catechism, although sometimes they could be subtle things, in other respects they could be drastic. So once that happens, I think they have the foundations, then they're able to see more clearly these contradictions. And so I think traditional Catholics, again, I don't want to term them like that, but people who've read the church fathers, the doctors, and able to quickly see and able to see the contradictions, they studied these things in more detail.
So it was about 3 weeks ago, maybe, that I emailed Dr. Robert Stackpole, who works at the National Shrine of the Divine Mercy in Stockbridge, and he's a lay theologian. He's their house theologian, and so he writes about it, and he also replies to people. He's sort of like their publicist, somebody who, and also will keep in touch with the public and inform the public about various things, and produce ongoing content for the shrine and on different things, including the Divine Mercy. And so I wrote to him about 3 weeks ago, and I told him that he is promoting a false devotion. I was not confrontational about it or not nice. I just said that I've been doing a research project, and the conclusion is that it is a false devotion. So I was direct about that. I said also that, I didn't think it was really a big problem because it's a mere private revelation, which when it's true, it's for the assistance of the faithful. When it's false, it's a great danger and it must be avoided and rejected. The point being that it's a private, I'm not touching on any of the truths, the doctrines of the faith. So it's a private revelation. So if I were to, in an informed way, having been careful about it, if I were to say, this is false, based on the criteria of the church and based on its history, that's not a major disaster for anybody. And I said, of course, the shrine may not like to hear that, as it were. But he was very cordial. I didn't expect to have a message from him, but it was several days later he wrote back and said that, thank you for the good letter or email. And he had a fairly long sort of rebuttal to what I said. He also asked his colleague, who was one of Marian Father priests, and asked something about his opinion about what I said. It ended up with him sending information to me that I actually found very valuable, as he's being both nice and generous with information. So I don't know. I don't feel like we're in a real contest with the people at the shrine. I don't know what's happening at the shrine, but because I don't think they're of ill will, I think it's been I described it as an echo chamber. And they're sharing information with one another, which is based on a lot of biographies, but it's very soft scholarship. And also, you can find, if you're willing to ignore critical information, you can create a conclusion that is in favor of this devotion, but you have to ignore about half of the information. Like Rosicki, the Vatican theologian who was, I want to say hired, he was tasked by John Paul II to write a theological dissertation on the diary. Is this acceptable? You can read it, and there's not a lot of criticism. It requires a second theologian to critique it. I'm not prepared to do that because I'm not a theologian, but it requires the priest to critique that document. So that's where we are, where you have these justifications from very high-level Vatican officials. So if you wanted to construct an argument in the favor of this devotion, you could, but it would be very ignorant, and that's where we are. It'd be missing a lot of key information. Once you look even a little bit, you find key information that just blows it out of the water. That's my opinion. If I'm exaggerating, then somebody can, tell me that, can debate it with me.
Some good points there, Nathan. In fact, one traditional priest here in Poland, Father Oliwiński, who's a doctor of theology of Father Rosicki's work, and he clearly showed the holes in it and what contradicted the Catholic faith here. So only on just a few pieces, so it's because the original theological work of Father Rosicki was, I think, over 500 pages. So it's a lot of writing, but like I said, Father Oliwiński was able to look at the key issues here and the contradictions, basically. Some of the so-called techniques that Father Rosicki used when they were pointed out by Father Oliwiński, they were quite clear. It was quite evident.
At this point, quite honestly, I mean, we're really, we're lay Catholics, and I'd like to say we've done a credible job at a research project. It's not unlike a college thesis. But what we're not prepared to do is heavy theological justifications or criticisms. We have Father Scott, but he may not be the priest who does the extensive criticism. So at this point, we might call upon priests to take this seriously. Start with the work that we've done. You may as well start with a booklet that is written, that's available on the site, 40 pages. There'll be a 120-page book which will probably be the last document that I write about it. That'll be the extended version. But a priest can take that, see what they think of it, print out the leaflet that's one page, hand it to other priests. Likewise, the laity can print it out and leave it at the, in the lobby of the church, or hand it out at a meeting or something like that. You can discuss with family and friends.
I would add that should, in theory, be easier for priests here in Poland to get involved and try to get to the sources, the original sources, the primary sources. The problem being, though, is that they're very difficult to get hold of simply because the nuns at Łagdawiki and other places kind of like a Fort Knox, and only certain people are allowed to have access to these things. So, like, for example, the original diary. It's not even copies of that, or photos are not, made public. So, all this diary that was badly translated, that's never been made public as well. So these are the things we're saying, look, put everything out there. The truth should defend itself, and where nobody should be afraid of it. I think that's the Catholic approach to things.
Please join me in a deep dive into these contradictions in my playlist, where we challenge Faustina's claims with Catholic teaching and historical context. Also, please check out realdivinemercy.org. Thank you for watching this video. I'll be back in a week or so, but in the meantime, please check out my Facebook page, my page on X, and my page on Instagram. Every day I post additional content that you won't find on this YouTube channel, and please pray for the church.
Mercy, mercy, mercy.